Logitech's been making link and hub-based remotes for a while now. This review certainly isn't the first. But I'm a regular guy with a regular salary, so a $300 remote always seemed a bit of an unnecessary indulgence, however good it was. If you're like me, you come home to a mess of remotes like this one. Maybe you even have to use a game controller to control your media streaming and things like that. And you've probably gotten used to the little dance we all have to do trying to line up our remotes with the sensor on whatever component we're controlling. I dealt with that for many years. I've also tried many universal remotes like this one. A couple problems with these. First, you have to control every component individually, so you're still doing a lot of switching back and forth. They may not have all the buttons you need, and they're always just kind of cheaply made. I mean, this one, well, every universal remote that I've used has broken after just a couple of years. So I finally got to a point where I just couldn't take it anymore. I saved up my money and I bought a Logitech Harmony Elite. The purpose of this video is to see if it's worth it for a regular guy like me who doesn't live in a gilded castle to pay as much money for a remote as you might pay for an actual component. So let's just take a look. The Harmony Elite is designed to offload as much of the heavy workload as possible from the remote to the hub. It's the hub that really controls your components, while the remote controls the hub. The hub can use infrared, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth, and it listens for your remote via RF, so it can work with pretty much anything out there, and it doesn't need line of sight to your remote. It does need line of sight to your components, though, and for that reason you also get a couple of IR blasters in the box. If you need more, you can buy these separately for about $10, but you'll need a Y cable to attach them because the hub only has 2 ports. The hub also lets you do things like control home automation and use your phone as a full replacement for the remote itself. With the free iOS or Android app, you get all the functions of the Harmony Elite remote and more. Of course, you do miss out on the physical buttons, which is always a deal breaker for me with any touchscreen-based remote. The remote itself is part touchscreen, part physical buttons, all of which are backlit. The touchscreen is reasonably responsive, although nowhere close to what you're probably used to on your phone. I dislike touchscreen remotes, but having at least a small touchscreen is almost a necessity on a remote like this, since it needs to be able to combine different command sets and give you access to more commands than buttons would fit in that same amount of space. It also gives it a little bit of future-proofing, since it can simulate buttons on future remotes or game controllers that may not exist yet. In practice, with my setup, most often the touchscreen is simulating the numeric keypad or Xbox controller buttons, which I've gotten used to using this way. But I do like having play, skip, and pause buttons as tactile physical buttons so that I can easily feel them in the dark while watching a movie. The overall feel of the remote is good, but I'd expect it to be a little more premium for even the $250 that it now costs, let alone the $350 it did just a little while ago. I'd think we could get a little metal for that, eh, Logitech? The entire remote is plastic and feels not too much different from most remotes, although the textured back is a nice touch. My biggest pet peeve is probably that it doesn't sit flat. It's rounded, so it wobbles constantly, even when somebody's just walking by. It is rechargeable, and it includes a charging stand that you really need to remember to put the remote into every night. Battery life seems to be about 4 days with light use without charging, maybe 2 with heavy use. The remote also wobbles a bit in the stand, which I feel like it shouldn't. For this price, I want things to really positively click together. The biggest innovation of the Harmony line of remotes is that it's activity-based rather than component-based. To watch a movie, you're not turning on your TV, switching it to input 1, then hitting the button for your receiver, turning it on, and switching it to Blu-ray. Instead, once you've set that activity up and added all the commands and components you need to it, you're just hitting Watch Movie. The hub knows to do all the rest, and it combines the controls you actually need into one interface on the remote. This feels like the way things should work. My system finally feels like a system and not a collection of different parts. It also makes the remote really easy for anyone to use, although that initial setup can be confusing, time-consuming, and involve a lot of trial and error if your devices don't quite like the sequence you've set up with the default delays. Once you do have it set up and working right, it's kinda glorious. It's the only universal remote I've owned where I didn't find myself reaching for the originals after a week or two because some function or button was missing. If something's missing, just add it. If you don't like the layout, remap the buttons or the touchscreen. It's extremely customizable, although it does take some time to sync back and forth, and this seems to happen more often than it needs to. There's one really big caveat here, and that's that it really just didn't play nicely at all with my PlayStation 4. I don't mean just not being able to turn it on. That's a known issue and not something Logitech can really do anything about since it's a Sony policy. But once the PS4 is on, the Harmony should be able to fully control it. In my case, almost nothing worked outside the main interface. Fast forwarding and skipping, for example, did not work at all in any app. I checked the button mappings and I checked online to see if anyone else had a similar problem, but maybe it was a recent PS4 update that broke things because I didn't find much online that was helpful. The remote can learn functions that it's missing, but only on components controlled via infrared, not Bluetooth like the PS4. Combined with the power on issue, I really can't recommend this remote for use with the PS4 based on my experience. Thankfully, it works just fine with the Xbox One S, which is infrared based and is a better media player than the PS4 anyway. Sometimes older technology is just more reliable, though I wouldn't mind if everything switched at least to RF. Of course, it also works great with all my other components, although strangely I had to turn off the Echo power mode on my TV or it wouldn't turn on. This mode puts the TV in a lower power state when it's off, so it's using a bit more juice in standby mode just so the Harmony can wake it up. Not really sure why that's needed, but it just didn't work otherwise. If you have an Amazon Echo smart speaker, you can also use Alexa to control your system through the Harmony Elite. I know that some people would rather voice control be integrated into the remote itself, and maybe that'll come in the next iteration, but personally, I don't like talking to my components or employing specialized government listening devices, so it's not an issue for me either way.
Play the Muppet Movie.
On the other hand, my TV's included remote does have voice control built in, so objectively speaking, I'm losing that functionality with the Harmony remote. So back to the original question, is a Harmony Elite worth it if you're not lounging in your solarium on a yacht in the harbor of St. Bart's? Well, yes, I'd probably find it really hard to go back now that I have one. This remote attempts to tie the entire entertainment experience together in a seamless way. It controls your full system at once, and not just by assigning certain buttons to different components, but by creating entire activities that blend in different components, hopefully without you even noticing. The RF hub design also means you don't even need to be in the same room with your stuff, much less pointing the remote at it. This is probably even more useful with an Alexa smart speaker, although I don't have one to test it with. That said, I had major problems using it to control my PlayStation 4, which was one of the big reasons I bought it. Luckily, it works just fine with the Xbox One, and that's become my primary media player. It's also still in need of some more refined software and hardware. The software is still a bit slow and clunky, and the hardware really should feel a little more premium and a little less plasticky at this price point. I also wish the battery life were just a bit better for those drunken evenings when I forget to put it back on its charging stand, but this isn't a deal breaker. Overall, this is the only remote I've ever had that's really been able to replace all the others I'm currently using, and once it's set up, it's simple enough for anyone. I just can't recommend it to PS4 users given the issues I've had.